Welcome. My name is Robert Asencio, and I'm here today on this series, bringing to you the series of The Silent Struggle with my co-host, David Magnusson, former retired Chief David Magnusson. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay. I'm very proud to be retired. Thank you very much, Robert.
And today we're going to speak with also a retired member of the police, but he's from New York, Lieutenant Richard Mack. Richard Mack served with the NYPD for 26 years. And now he's dedicated himself to doing work across the country, pioneering work, not just police officers, first responders, but community stakeholders as well, on our needs to stay strong and stay well, mentally, physically. Well, how do you deal with that? Let's bring Richard Mack on. Welcome.
Thank you, Robert.
All right. So to frame it up, you came on the NYPD in 1994, right?
I came on in 1995, and I went to work in East New York, Brooklyn, which was a very, we could call it a tough neighborhood.
Yeah. We're going to get there for a minute because I don't know if I ever shared this with you. I was born in Kings County Hospital, Brooklyn. Lived in the South, on South 2nd Street, down by Williamsburg. But you meant...
Can I interrupt a second? I was born in Doctors Hospital, lived in Murray Hill, then we moved out to Left Wreck City. So I think we all have a commonality here. I think we're all good.
Doctors Hospital, I don't believe exists anymore.
It does not. No. But yeah, it's all good. So now we feel a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah, New Yorkers. Man, when we get together, we have to have some of that pizza.
There you go.
So you mentioned about you graduated in the police academy with a small class. How large was that small class?
My class was, we graduated with 1,800 officers.
That's larger than some police departments.
1,800, right? Now, that's not including the family, I'm guessing, too. So how big a crowd was that?
Well, the crowd, because it was Madison Square Garden, because that's the only place you could really fit that crowd. I think the crowd was somewhere in the realm of 10,000.
When you exit there, good luck trying to find a place to eat.
Can't eat anywhere near the guard during an event. That's
right. Got you.
So you came on, and then you went. What was your first assignment? You mentioned you went over to work at Brooklyn, right? You were assigned to Brooklyn.
My first assignment was the 75th Precinct in East New York, Brooklyn. I got there in the aftermath of the incident involving a very corrupt officer that made national news called Michael Dowd, and I was in the 75th Precinct until January of 2002.
And I got to see that documentary. You had suggested it when we met in Miami about a month ago, the 75th.
Yes.
For anybody that hasn't seen it, I recommend it. Have you seen it yet?
I believe I did, yes.
Yeah, it's pretty intense.
Yes.
So when you came on, I know that precinct at one point was one of the most violent precincts in New York City, probably in the country.
It was one of the most violent in the country, yes.
What was the experience when you came on as a rookie officer, man? You must have gone right to the road and said, what the hell's going on here?
Well, in New York City, you don't go right to the road. You do a lot of foot posts for your first year. I remember the first time I was third man in a car, they actually shot out a police vehicle window. And they had a car pursuit, like the first day of my third man in a car policing career, to show us how things operate in East New York, Brooklyn. So
were you in that car?
A lot of crime. What's that?
Were you in that car when it was shot out? When the window was shot out?
No, we actually were in a call. So when we came outside, the car window was shot out. But a lot of stress, a lot of high crime, and a lot of violence in East New York, Brooklyn for the years I was there.
And then you, I would imagine, got other assignments and then made it up through the ranks, right? You ascended to the rank of lieutenant.
Yes. I mean, I've been to several commands. During my time in the 75th Precinct, I was there actually through the 9/11 World Trade Center attacks. And I worked down at Ground Zero doing a recovery, not really much rescue. And then I got asked to do peer support for members of the New York City Police Department with a group called PAPA. And I was doing that for most of the 9/11 time until I got promoted to sergeant.
That's police organization providing peer assistance, correct?
That is correct.
Especially after 9/11, just how important that was. And I saw a bit of a video and what took place during the course of that video you were talking about, where officers were out at Staten Island sifting through, and I can't imagine. And I mean, if ever there was a need beyond once leaving the Ground Zero per se, going out to Staten Island and the task they had at hand, that to me was it's chilling. Can you talk about that a bit?
Sure. I mean, to be honest, in some ways, the Staten Island landfill was worse than Ground Zero.
Mm-hmm.
It really seemed like almost like you were working on another planet. It was a newly closed landfill that they converted to take all materials from Ground Zero to be sifted again. And the commanding officer of the landfill would always tell us we were there for one primary goal, and that was to find body parts to give families closure. And so what you do is you would have the landfill was it had closed as a landfill in March of that year. So this is now September. And the first thing they had to do was constantly hose the ground down because methane, it was all dirt with obviously landfill material underneath. And the methane would bubble up through the dirt. So as you're walking or driving around, you would just see bubbles pop up during the day, and it smelled like a landfill. And you were out there all day. So originally they had MASH type tents from the TV show. And then eventually they got these more modern type of air negative type of tents that made it a little bit more bearable, especially during like a lunch break or you just wanted to eat or relax.
Yeah, that odor must have been a killer. Lord, not only the sights, the odor, and the task at hand. You know, you pointed to something that I really hadn't thought about. And if you see my lapel pin, it's a 9/11 pin. It was given while I was in the Florida House of Representatives. Some of our brothers and sisters came to Tallahassee. I don't remember the occasion, but they had a handful of pins, and I took off my state representative pin and I put this on, and I've never taken. This is the only pin I use because of what they said and what it says on my pin. Never forget. We will always struggle to never forget. So thank you for that, my brother. You mentioned to me something that, again, I hadn't really thought about in that context, that the attack on the World Trade Center and the building's collapse, a catastrophic collapse, actually turned into something that was even greater, which is the rescue. It was the largest rescue of this country's ever seen. Can you talk about that?
Sure. I always say 9/11 was the worst and greatest day in the history of America. It killed almost 3,000 people, like 2,700 in New York, and then the other 300 in Pennsylvania and Washington. And the main thing I tell people is, listen, it was one of the worst days, but one of the greatest days. It was one of the greatest rescues. There was 25,000 people in the World Trade Center, and most of them got out. And that is something to be revered. And the other thing was the police officers coming from all around the country and firemen. And I remember getting stopped by New Jersey state troopers on the West Side Highway asking me for identification. And to be honest, I loved it because it showed that we were all in it together.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up down in the village in Lower Manhattan, and my mother worked across the street originally from the World Trade Center. So I really grew up down there. And I think I had mentioned to you also about the movie Boat Lift, which was a short 10-minute documentary. It's on YouTube, and it talks about how how many people were evacuated from Lower Manhattan via boat because all personnel, all transportation was shut down. So the only way people could get out of Manhattan was either by boat or walking across bridges back home. And
that was a powerful documentary. Did you see it?
I did see it. It's almost synonymous about the leadership that Churchill, when he sent them over to Dunkirk and brought people back. That's the thing I thought about, just the leadership that went on. And a lot of people just took that leadership onto themselves and said, I got a boat. I'm going to help. I'm going to take care of my fellow American, a fellow New Yorker, bring them back and take care of them. And like you just mentioned, LT, I mean, the worst of the times, but the best of the times in what humanity had to offer within New York and the surrounding areas, the entire country, to be honest with you.
So it's an all hands on deck call for help, right? Where the spirit of the American nature just came out. We came on to address help. Sort of like we should be doing now with mental health, right?
100%.
You know, we don't talk about the officers who were injured. We don't talk about the people who were injured, civilians, because they just did not seek the help or did not know the help, or maybe didn't have the courage or the support. Richard, you were injured on the job and it caused your retirement. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I'd like to get right from there into your volunteer work, which is part of this series that we're running now.
Sure. Well, I could say I've been injured more than once in the police department. I've had stitches, broken hands, and then the final injury that I had within the police department during the George Floyd riots in 2020. There was a unity march that wanted to come from Brooklyn to Manhattan across the Brooklyn Bridge. At the same time, there was kind of a new type of Occupy Wall Street type group that had formed by City Hall, and they were actually trying to do Occupy City Hall. They were trying to take over City Hall. And for a couple of weeks, we had to be outside City Hall. Actually, we were inside City Hall to prevent these protesters from taking over City Hall. And the reason they wanted to take it over primarily was they wanted to force the city to defund the police. And it was ironic because we were there to protect their right to protest as long as they didn't try to interfere with government or hurt anyone. And so while this unity march was taking place over the Brooklyn Bridge, this group went and tried to do everything they could to disrupt it. And part of it was several officers were injured. And while we were responding to the bridge to assist other officers, we saw a lieutenant sergeant that had been struck over the head by a metal pipe. And as we attempted to intervene, myself and a couple other officers got attacked. One officer suffered a concussion. I myself had, and it was on the news, had been attacked by a gentleman with brass knuckle type jewelry. And I received injuries to both my eyes and was jumped on and fell on the ground. And I had a fractured eye. My eye was sinking into my orbital bone. And then I had to be removed from the walkway at Brooklyn Bridge. The only problem was you can't get a vehicle up there. So I had to actually be walked off the bridge, even though I couldn't see. And when I got to the bottom, there was an ambulance along with the Occupy protesters, who then proceeded to scream and yell at me and jump on the ambulance. And I kind of felt like I was a New York Ranger walking into the Nassau Coliseum. But based on the noise from the crowd. And then I had to go to the emergency room, get stitched up, and the next day I had to get surgery.
Not a robot, a human being. David, I mean, I think that points to a person that can speak to the hardships of the job.
Well, without a doubt, let's go back a couple minutes. We talked about 9/11 before we transition here a second. And the word has been used in history before. Never forget. Keep in mind, there are some that have gone through so many things they cannot forget. It may sound synonymous, but it's not. And
is that the haunt that you're talking about?
Yeah. There's just certain things that stick with you, and it can be vicarious too, especially in a position of authority where, if you're chief, lieutenant, sergeant for your men and women, something affects them. I mean, what affected Lieutenant Mack, I mean, obviously other people saw it. They're affected by it as well. Maybe not as much as the lieutenant was, and he can speak to that. But there's these things that you just can't forget. And this is where I want to hear now, because I'm very much interested to hear what he has to say about how this is working out and how we can get people to proactively get the assistance they need, or what we can look for if there's somebody else that's going through some some incident or trauma that we can help them as well. So
yeah, that's a great point. Hey, Richard, can you help the audience walk through seeking assistance for anybody that's out there struggling and draw some parallels to your current volunteer work, national work,
Sure.
in helping others?
Sure. Well, first of all, let me just say, there's the main issue with helping others is first they have to recognize they have a problem. And it also comes to the leaders of policing to recognize their officers not only may have a problem, but need to find a safe place to seek help without unnecessary retribution. So you have issues like suicide, which has dramatically risen nationally, not just among police, but nationally among the country, and especially among younger audiences, younger people. I mean, it's like one of the leading causes of death, I think, 18 to 24. And I'm sure the chief will attest that he has more than one officer under the age of 24 in the police department. Then you also combine that with things such as complex PTSD, which is just ongoing trauma or traumatic stress-related incidents. Depending on where you work, that can be very drastic. You also have the issue of depression. Something like 18% of the population will suffer some type of severe depression in their lifetime. And if they don't have a safe place to seek help, then that depression can compound and lead to other issues down the line. So back to why I'm in peer support is to give officers a place where they can get help confidentially. And the goal is not to take them off patrol, but to keep them in the fight, keep them in top shape, not physically, but mentally. And mental health definitely has a stigma that some officers look at it as a sign of weakness. But the whole point of peer support is to give a positive light to seeking out mental health so they stay mentally healthy for themselves, for their families. And if an officer is mentally healthy, they can better serve the community.
So for anyone viewing this that is struggling and hasn't dealt with it or needs attention, there's a resource out there. Pick up the phone, call 988. That's one of the first stops. These people are there. They're waiting for those that need help. Anonymously, they will talk to you, but don't suffer alone. You're not alone. I think that's appropriate, right?
I do, and going back to a conversation we had recently with Miami Police Chief Manny Morales, who, as head of the department, he proactively goes, and he said it publicly on a newscast. He proactively goes once a month for just a checkup. He talked about it. That was leadership personified. Let it start from the top. And then the other issues. I mean, if you got 103 fever and you don't take care of yourself, you have the flu, and you don't want to see a health professional, is that the wisest decision? If you tweak your back, you could barely move. Not to see somebody, to get that work done. Is that the best thing? Same thing, and more importantly, with the mental issues, in the sense that you get over the flu, 6 months from now, you go, yeah, I had the flu, and I forget about it. You have issues now, you may get over for the day or two or a month, but they haven't been dealt with a professional. And so it's so important to deal with these issues proactively, and it's important, those close to people, just to keep an eye out in conversations, whether it's a colleague on the street, whether family, friends, be there for them, be alert for it. Just like we said in the past, if you see somebody with runny nose, sick, barely can walk, you have a feel, and you need to see a doctor. You all right? You don't look well. You can't tell basically with the mental issue component, so to speak. So it's really up to the individual person. I think the lieutenant sort of alluded to that. They have to take care of themselves as well and be proactive in that measure. And, at least there's things in place to assist them right away, as you just said. But it's so important to get people to change that paradigm. It is not a weakness. Taking care of yourself physically or mentally is a strength. It's a strength. Correct. Because you're going to be better as a result of it.
Yeah. So, Richard, I mean, I got to tell you, thank you, because you were part of the class that um, I just happened to go to the class in preparation for this podcast, and here I am meeting with some people with a lot of experience in law enforcement, and I wind up benefiting because you helped me walk through some of the issues that I was dealing with, and I didn't want to share with anybody, right? Some of my own internal anxiety. So I thank you, brother. Your
Thank
peer
you.
support worked, even though that wasn't your mission there. What We have 3 minutes left, 2 minutes. What parting words can you give our audience as far as resources available to them, that they shouldn't struggle along?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, thank you guys for having me on. I'm always willing to share the word of the importance of peer support, whether it's policing or any other type of job. But there's a couple of things to remember. When you retire, the stress and trauma doesn't go away. I actually know more police officers who committed suicide after they retired than I do police officers who committed suicide when they were active. So the stress doesn't go away. You have to seek help. There's no shame in reaching out for help. There's nothing wrong with getting help as you would treat any other issue you may be having. So you can do things like call the Wounded Blue. 988, of course, is the suicide number. But you know what? Most people are not suicidal. But those who are stressful and suffering it alone can lead to depression, which can lead to suicidal thoughts or tendencies down the line. You don't have to be suicidal to seek out for help. You don't have to wait until you're drowning to get help. You can get help today. You can. There's all kinds of apps out there that will connect you with a clinician. There's all kinds of departments that offer mental health services confidentially. And if you're worried about confidentiality amongst your department, you can seek help through your local health insurance as well. The important thing is that you get help, do it today, and remember, you are not alone.
Thank you. Any
Thank
last
you very
thoughts,
much.
Chief?
No, it's just fantastic information, and I hope it falls on very open ears, because it may sound simple. It's far from simple, and that's where you need that collaboration that he puts through with the peer group. You need it with friends and family, with this sort of information to plug it in and use it, because it can go a very long way. Like you said, silent struggle. Let's take the silence out of that and help.
Yeah. So on that note, we're going to wrap up this particular show. Stay tuned as we have many more stakeholders, not just police officers, not just judges, but clinicians that will be coming on and joining us. We will have clinical workers from hospitals joining us as well. So please do not struggle alone. Drop us a line. Let us know if you need a resource from us. We're here to serve you. Richard, we look forward to you join us in this continued evolution of this series and our work in addressing this silent struggle that people should not be struggling alone with. To the Millers and Miami's Community News, to our producer, young producer, Alex Sukis, we thank you. To you, the audience, the invaluable audience, we look forward to speaking with you in the near future.